So, Namaskar everyone. And as we are taking this journey, this is going to be our 12th session of Srimad Bhagavad Gita with Sundar Rajanji. So, from all of us, we'll be requesting him to take our journey to the next level. Please, Ji,
Okay.
over to you.
Pranam, everybody. And let me share my screen and we'll get started. Give me 1 second. So, welcome everybody to the next session on the Bhagavad Gita. We'll continue on chapter 16. So, chapter 16, as you all know, is Deva Asura Sampat Vibhaga Yoga. And till last week or the week before, we had seen all the Deva Gunas. There are 26 Deva Gunas. And these are not just gunas that is mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita for the Devas. These are gunas that help us become leaders in this life. Bhagavad Gita is a manual for some to get to the next world, to the higher world, but it's also a manual to become successful in this world as we are. Okay. Having said that, last week we covered about 6 gunas that were the Ashura gunas, right? The Kama, Krodha, and all those things. And today we'll continue on that and we'll see not just the gunas, but the attitudes of the Asuri thinking. Whenever you think Asuri, you have to start thinking of the mindset of a failure or a mindset that will drag a society down to failure. Now, this is more of a summary, but we'll start with the invocation and then we'll go on to the actual shlokas. Okay. Join me in the prayers. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahabhiryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma Vedrishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om. Okay. So, moving on with this continuation of the Bhagavad Gita, we stopped at Shloka 8 last time. So, this time we'll continue from Shloka 9. So, what I'm going to do is we will not have lots of pictures and stories like we had during the Devaguna, because the Devaguna or the qualities of success were very important to actually deep dive into and look at it, because we have to cultivate those qualities. Asura Gunas, we already know because we either see it in the surroundings or we have read it in the newspapers and watch it on TV. So it's more to be aware. There is no deep dive into Kama and Krodha and all, but it will be more of understand the attitude. And if you see this around you or probably even in your own thoughts, negate it and find a way to come out of it. I'm pretty sure nobody here has those Asura Gunas, but those of you who have it, try to get out of it, because that helps a person move on from the tamasic or rajasic quality into the sattvic quality, which helps you become a leader in this world and the next. Okay, so we'll start with shloka 9. Etam drashtim avashtabhya nashtatmanolpabuddhayah prabhavantyugrakarmanah kshayaya jagato ahitah. So here, Shri Bhagavan says, and I think one of the feedbacks that we got from 2 sessions ago was also to learn Sanskrit as we go into Bhagavad Gita. So you'll find a lot of familiar words as we go, because words are reused, right? So etam drishtim avashtabhya. Etam means this, like this, drishti, viewpoint, avashtabhya, taking on these kind of viewpoints. What kind of viewpoints? The viewpoints that we saw in Shloka 8, which is basically the Kama, Darpa, Damba, Mada, Anvita, all those viewpoints. Nashtatmanaha, these people who have lost their souls, not literally, but they have given up on the good quality or good side of their souls. And Alpa Buddhayaha, people who are of very limited intellect. We are not talking about IQ here. Limited intellect meaning people who have very less vision beyond the short vision. We see this happening in our own world today. I'll come to that as to examples. And these kind of asuri gunas, prabhavanti ugra karmanaha, they indulge in very dangerous activities. Let's break it down here. So etam drishtim avashtabhya, we already talked about. nashtatmanaha, who are petty minded and ignorant, meaning all the activities that they do are either selfish or destructive. We can see, for example, in career, people want to go ahead and become leaders in their own sectors, which is a good thing. But the moment you start doing it at the cost of somebody else, that becomes asuri. Striving towards a great ambition for the sake of your community or for the sake of the world, for the sake of the country, a larger goal is Daiva Guna. The same kind of ambition for selfish reason becomes Asura. So once you are clear on this kind of selfish versus selfless, you'll understand the difference between the Daiva and Asura forces. Okay. Alpa Buddhi means short sightedness or a short intellect. Their grasp is only towards the here and now or immediate profits rather than long term profits. Okay. Prabhavanti Ugra Karmana. Ugra means very extreme or volatile or dangerous kind of karmas. And Kshayaya Jagato Ahitaha. And this actually brings about a destruction of the world. And we actually see it literally back in Krishna's time. He meant society, but now it is destroying the world. For example, destroying the rainforest, destroying ecosystem, all the junk that's been the pollution of the seas, the oceans, the trawlers, the wars, the famine, impoverization, economic damage, the stock market crashes, or the financial crisis, so to speak. All these are caused by asuri gunas of the profit, small profits, but they don't care. The asuras, when I say they, the asuras don't care about how the world goes as long as they are benefited from a small, even a small viewpoint. And that's what we're getting at. And these are the qualities that a person should give up. These seems very extreme. I agree. But there are smaller, to a smaller extent, even within a family. Is there any activity that you do or any habit that you have that pains your near and dear ones, that actually is not taken well, or you're kind of constantly deriding others? So those are the qualities that we have to see and change ourselves, because that's a microcosm level, and these are all like macrocosm, which is like affecting the world. So everybody has a circle of influence, and the more and more you are aware, self-aware of what kind of gunas that you have, it'll be easy for you to get rid of it and move towards a very productive lifestyle that leads you towards moksha or freedom. Okay. And next we move on. Continuing on the same thought, Bhagavan says, Kamamashritya dushpuram dhambamanamadhanvitaha mohat gruhitva sadgrahan pravartante ashuchivrataha. Pravartante shuchivrataha. But the is silent, therefore it becomes ashuchivrataha. Usually it's not pronounced. Okay. So what it means is, I'll go back. Kamam ashritya dushpuram. Dushpuram kamam ashritya means with desires that are insatiable. Dushpuram, like which cannot be filled, right? So they have so much of desire and any amount of ambition, they'll keep on going and destroying the world or taking profits from it. They're takers. Okay. And damba mana madanvita. These are the qualities we saw last week, which is out of vanity, out of conceit, out of ideological affiliations. Mohat gruhitva sadgrahan. Basically, they take on these things and they get into all these karmas, which are either unacceptable by society or unhygiene, unclean. And these also leads to attitude. So the attitudes that they express are ego, arrogance, and self-centeredness. And asuras, very importantly, don't have any sympathy or empathy. They have a very apathetic worldview, right? And you can also see these in some leaderships. Basically, it's not about how you are or what your stress level is. As long as you do the job, you're fine, right? So anywhere that a leader demands loyalty over welfare of the team or the organization, that becomes a very asuri thinking, which actually leads down to the demoralization of an organization. So we are looking at Bhagavad Gita both as terms of the spiritual and in terms of material or organizational or personal level. Okay. And the intentions of an asura, as we talked about earlier, is always outright impure or evil, which means you always have an agenda with which you approach things, right? The agenda is never about helping the other person. The agenda is basically how can I get help from you and leave you when the help is done. So they disappear and they think that they don't even know you once the work is done. So kind of use and throw kind of things. And the outward conduct, as we saw, is ashuchi vrata. So it'll be very crude, crass, and unacceptable. So these are the qualities that you have to look out for a asura mindset. Okay. Continuing, chintam aparimeyam cha pralayantam upashritah kamopabhoga parama etavad iti nishchitaha. So the asuras, again, this is again a single thought we are breaking down into multiple shlokas. So sometimes you will feel like the same thought is being repeated over and over. Really speaking, there's a subtle difference, or it's one thought, because we are covering it in shloka by shloka. It seems that it's a repetition, but it's not repetition. Here, it's a different level that Bhagavan is talking about. So the attitude, now it's come from guna to attitude. The attitude of an asura or asuri guna is basically being obsessed or being burdened with lots of worry and stress and anxiety. So chintam aparimeyam cha, right? And they seek total gratification of just their senses. Now, there were many philosophical divisions in India back in long time. Charvaka is one of them. Charvaka is basically there is no beyond, there is no soul. Basically, we are all made of atoms, and the entire biological world is basically here and now. It's nowadays they call it YOLO. You only live once, right? So that is the kind of attitude that these people take on, the YOLO attitude. And they just enjoy as long as they live and leave nothing as a legacy for the people who follow, meaning for the next generation or for anybody else. It's me, mine, and as long as I'm gratified, I'm happy. Okay. And they have no regard for the hereafter. And this kind of leadership will bring down a society or bring down an organization or a family, right? Because this is reckless behavior, prone to risk, and because there is no leadership here, it's a culture of fear. So such leaders, an asura, always has followers not because they're following an ideal. It's because they don't want to offend the leader. And there's a culture of fear. Wherever an organization, for example, in a team meeting, if people are afraid to talk, afraid to counter a leader, then you have to immediately question as to why that is happening. So that might be, are they afraid because they might lose their job? Is there a consequence? Is the leader too unhappy? Is there a listening? These are the symptoms. I'm not saying that leader is an asura, but these are the symptoms that you need to see to the organization. Otherwise, it might lead to disenchantment and people will start leaving the company, right? So those are the things we can learn from Asuri Gunas. Okay, moving on. Ashapashashatair kamah krodha parayanaha ihante kama bhogartham anyayenartha sanjayan. Now these are Ashuras, and those in the last shloka we saw how they are worried or they are anxious or they are stressed, and they take on a lot of work. Here, Asha Pasha Shatair Baddai, being tied down or bogged down by hundreds or myriads of Asha Pasha, meaning attachments. I want to do this, I want to accomplish this. Or, if I don't get this new car or a new TV, or I'm just thinking of small examples. But there are people who lay down plans, a grand plan, so that they can destroy everything else to attain that one small goal. Kama, Krodha, Parayana. How do they achieve this? Using Kama and Krodha. They'll either bribe or they'll show lure or they'll increase greed or show their anger. but they'll try to achieve their ends using all these things. Ihante kama bhogarthan anyayena artha sanjayan, very importantly, and all this they do, right? Given into kama, which is kama is basically desires. They acquire wealth in illegal ways. Anyayena means not by traditional or legal ways, and they try to acquire all these things. You would have seen, examples in the Puranas of Hiranyakashipu or Ravana or even Duryodhana. All those try to resort to the wrong means to acquire what they want. Right? They don't earn it; they grab it. Right? And when we speak about grabbers versus earners, this is a very important terms. Uh, a society that is functional usually builds it, you know, and building takes a very, very, very long time. Stealing is quick. All they need is one skill, and in a trustful society, stealing is very easy. Distrustful society is hard. So it's very important for us to understand how to build a society that's fully trustful, at the same time to weed out or keep away or be aware of elements that could create distrust and steal away the acquired wealth, right? So that is the purport of this particular shloka. Okay, now all this, like three shlokas together, all these go together, it's one chain of thought. And think of it, when I'm reading it out or when I'm telling the uh, meaning of it, as the thought process of an asura, right? And sometimes it will sound very familiar because we would have seen all the Duryodhana serials about Duryodhana and all. Ida madhyamaya labdham idam prapsye manoratham idam asti idam apime bhavishyanti punardhanam. So ida madhyamaya labdham. This I have acquired today. So I have acquired all this today. So think of it like a person saying, I have acquired all these properties today or the success today. Imam prapsye manoratham, and I will acquire this using my thought process, meaning I've planned this and I'll accomplish this. Manoratham. And idamasti idamapi me. This is mine and that will also be mine. Okay. Bhavishyanti punardhanam. Like I will reacquire all the wealth I want to gain. Right. So all this kind of thought process as to it is me, mine, and I want to get all this is the primary thing that drives the mindset of a asura. It's never been we. It's always me, me, and me. It's always maya and all, right? And asau maya hata shatrun hanishye chaparanapi ishwaroham aham bhogi siddhoham balavan sukhi. So here the person says, asau maya hataha. This person has been killed by me or destroyed by me. It could be politically, it could be person or physically. But this person has been destroyed by me. And those other people, I will also destroy them also. Because I am a Ishvara, I am the Lord of everything. I am a Bhogi, like I am the enjoyer of everything. Siddhoham, Siddhaha is I'm accomplished. Bhalavan and Sukhi. I am all strong, all powerful. Now you get the idea, the general idea of the arrogance that is emanating from this person because they have, for example, because they have seen success at a small level, at a gully level. They've probably beaten up and now they've gone up to a district level, they've gone up to national level, and now they are sitting at a position where they're controlling a lot of mafia, let's assume, right? Easier example, a lot of mafia, and that kind of mentality is more like, now nobody can beat me, now I am secure. But all the time, all the asuri swabhavas, the higher they go, even though they say that I'm secure and I have all these people, internally they're always unsecure, distrustful of everybody around them, and they're always in constant fear of when somebody is going to come and approve them, right? So that is the kind of mindset. This drives to stress and strain, which causes them to be even more cruel. So it is kind of a vicious cycle. Because they're insecure, they hurt others. Because they hurt others and grow, they become insecure, and the cycle goes on. आढ्यो बिझ आढ्यो बिझनवानस्मि कोऽन्योऽस्ति सदृशो मया यक्ष्ये धास्यामि मोदस्य ityajnana vimohitaha. So here, adyo, I am rich, I am wealthy, like I have all the wealth. Abhijanavan asmi. Abhijanavan means janaha is people. So I have people in high places. Like I know everybody. Like I'm a, let's say, MLA, son-in-law, whatever it is. Like I have people in high places and I have people around me who can support me. So people power, right? Ko anyo asti sadrusho maya. Who else is there who is equal to me? This is all a thought process, right? Yakshye. In this case, yakshye means doing yajnas. So I do yajnas, dasyami, I give dhanas and all those things. So now the person is justifying his superiority and morality also. Now the person is destroying people on the one side, and because he's throwing a few grains to birds and saving a couple of dogs, doesn't make him a morally upright person. But they fool themselves into saying that yaksheham dhasyami, like I actually give money to people. Modishya, like I enjoy things, right? And ityajnana vimohitaha. These are the kind of ignorant thoughts or thoughts born of ignorance that the asuri guna has. Okay. So far it is clear, right? So now the entire picture that's painted is not a deep down philosophical drive, because it is all a picturization of the negative traits that needs to be avoided, right? It's not a lesson to be learned be by introspection. The lesson to be learned is to remove anything that we have that goes along with this quality. Okay. And तानहं द्विषतः क्रूरान् संसारेषु नराधमान् क्षिपाम्यजस्रम् अशुभान् आसुरीनेव योनिषु. Now here Bhagavan is saying that Tan aham dvishata kruran. I kind of dvishataha. Dvishati means to make two, or in this case, hate also. Right? I disapprove of these kind of people. I hate this kind of naradhama, the horrible people, or adhama. I don't know. There's an English translation to it, but the bottom feeders of humanity. Let's put it that way. The bottom feeders of humanity. I hate these people and relinquish them, or throw them into the naraka, or the kind of I'll come to this, but remind me. In Hinduism, there is no such thing called hell that is permanent, or heaven that's permanent, right? But I throw them into this hell that is ignorance. Shipam Yajasram Ashubhan Asuri Neva Yonishu. They are born again and again into Asuri Yoni, or they take birth as more and more into this ignorant kind of births. In the next birth, also, the person will be ignorant. If you are doing financial planning, and I'm going to take a break from Gita, talk about spiritual planning, right? Most of us, we encourage our kids to go into, say, taekwondo or swimming or music classes and all those things, but we hardly do anything for them to go into spiritual classes, like literally spiritual, like some meditation classes or yoga sutra classes, right? I'm not talking about yoga classes where you bend your body, but how to focus and how to learn to be a good person, right? So dharmic, Ramayana, Mahabharata, step by step. These were the curriculum back in the days. Like the Gurukulam system used to have a beautiful curriculum where a child used to learn about the dharma, what is dharma and what is adharma. This brought about a collective awareness in the society of what is right and what is wrong. Kali Yuga, as it matures, you can see a lot of adharma happening in the name of dharma, right? Things are becoming more and more acceptable. So that is something we need to, and because there is a reason for that. The reason, the education system itself does not care about morality. It doesn't teach you morality. It teaches you science, math, linguistics, and other things, and tests you on that knowledge, and tries to keep you as far away from moral and ethical aspect of life, right? So that's what's happening. And Bhagavan here says that an asura. When I was talking about spiritual planning, this is what I'm getting at. So a person, let's say they grow up, and they grow up into a very angry, emotional person, and they leave the body. The jiva is going to seek another body that enables those karma vasanas or those karma prarabdhas, right? So it will take a body that is again asuri, and those tendencies continue. If there is no satsang and there is no change in direction for that jiva, it keeps on continuing from janma to janma to janma, which is birth to birth to birth, and this goes on endlessly, right? And here, that's what in one of the things I'll say ajasram, right? Without an end, it keeps on going. Now, when we do financial planning, what do? We don't do financial planning for tomorrow. It's basically retirement planning. What happens, right? But we hardly think of post retirement, like post retirement planning we do, but we don't do afterlife planning for the next janma, what we are going to be or how we are going to face it. Is my karma today going to affect me later? None of this is thought about, because knowingly or unknowingly we are also living the same kind of mindset the the YOLO crowd is living, which is you only live once. Now I'm born in this life, I've given this life. They don't even think I am given this life. I am here. So my career advancement is the greatest thing that I want. And after that, somehow, because I'm lucky to be in this body, I'll get a similar body next. So those kind of thinking will lead a person from ignorance to ignorance to ignorance, which is degradation of the jivatma. And because we are at a stage where we don't have a gurukulam system or a guru parampara that is going to help us, the entire society is more left to themselves to fend. The only things luckily that we have even now is the books, right? If we stop reading even those kind of books, then I don't think there's any hope for the afterlife planning, which is the what do you call it? It need not even be mukti. It could be the next life after this jivatma. What happens? So once you start thinking in those terms, it will start becoming clear, and that's why reading the Bhagavad Gita is very, very, very important in those kind of situations. So it gives you an insight into what is about to come. Okay. Now, this here, Bhagavan says, Asurim yonimapanna muda janmani janmani mam aprapyaiva kaunteya mam aprapyaiva kaunteya tato yantyadhamam gatim. Now, what happens to these kind of asuras is Asurim yonim apanna, being born into the asura, families again and again. Or when I say asura, it's not like people with horn and the rakshasas kind, but into ignorance over and over. These kind of ignorant people, janmani janmani, birth after birth, right? Mam aprapyaiva kaunteya, they don't attain me. I'll come to that me part in a bit. Mam aprapyaiva kaunteya tato yanti adamam gatim. They don't attain me. Okay. And they go and fall into the adama gati, which is the lower rungs of where the jivatma falls. Me here can be interpreted to be Krishna or Paramatma, but it's also me, the Paramatma in you, right? Aham, the Paramatma in you. So once you do not understand the Paramatma in you, which means you're going further away and away from self realization. Once you are away from self realization, it's going to be impossible for you to be independent or free. Now, when we think of mukti, mukti is not like a magical place. Mukti is your nature. Freedom is your nature. What we have done is assumed to be dependent and bound, baddha, right? So we have to break the chains and understand that I've always been free and I will always be free. Okay. I'll give you an example here. Now, the Bhagavad Gita portion is almost done. Like I had wanted to cover up till this shloka, and I've covered it. But we'll do a quick summary and then explain in context, and then I'll open it up for questions. So think of it as the jiva is surrounded by or looks at the world through a body, right? There are the sense organs through which it understands that the universe is in this way, and through the karmendriyas, it acts and expresses its will to do the karmas around the continuum, so to speak, in this world. Okay? Now, the Jiva Yatra always makes the Jiva think because of what is called Maya or ignorance. It makes it think that I am a limited person. I have no power. There's a power above me. All this is done by the Jiva completely in ignorance of its own nature, right? And this is what the Bhagavad Gita says from probably chapter 2. It talks about the Dehi or the Atma being independent. And when Bhagavan says that I am, it is not just somebody who lived 5,000, 6,000 years ago and was driving a chariot for Arjuna. Bhagavan here is here and now the Paripurna Atma, that is the continuum of this universe. Now, I remember a joke that I heard as a child, right? And that is basically about, and again, it's a very, I don't know, appropriate one or not, but there is a person who is considered not so bright in his village. So, his IQ level is not that great and people make fun of him. And he says, okay, I'll go. Back in the days, in the 80s, America was the place where everything was, wise and everything. So he goes to some place and he has a talk with President Reagan. So he says, teach me some logic. And, or maybe it was Einstein. And Einstein says, okay, I'll teach you some logic. I have a question for you. There are three people in my house. It's me, my wife. Oh, sorry. He says, it's my wife, my son, and there's a third person, right? The son's father. Who is that? And this person says, I don't know. And Einstein says, okay, the third person is me. And this guy says, oh, yeah, that makes logical. Now I understand logic. And he comes back and he throws a big party of in his village. And his entire village is like him only. Like the IQ level is not that great. And he says, okay, I learned logic when I went to America. So I'll ask you a question. The question is, I have three people in my house. My wife, my child, and there's a third person. And who is that? And the father of the child, right? And everybody says, I don't know. And this guy, wise man, says, oh, it is Einstein. Get it? So basically, that's exactly when we listen to this joke, we kind of think it's funny, or maybe it was if somebody had told it. But the idea is when Krishna says, I am, we think Krishna is. Just like Einstein said, I am, and we thought Einstein is. Whenever Krishna says, I am, you have to think of I am. The Atma within you, I am. The Paramatma is you. Until that door is revolved or opened, the curtain is opened, you are the Paramatma, you're Paripurna Paramatma, and this is what every Vedic text says over and over and over. I mean, it cannot get more clear than this. But what do? We expect some miracle to happen somewhere down the future because we have broken a coconut or gone to the temple, right? And that is not the attitude that we should be, operating under. The entire premise should be to understand all the upadhis or all the limitations that you have that prevents you from seeing who you are, and get us out of this rut of believing that I am a nobody to I am, like Aham Brahmasmi. And that is where this shloka or this entire 16th chapter will lead you to the realization that I have both the qualities of the Deva and the Asuras, right? So the Deva qualities, which is Ahimsa, Satyam, Akrodha, all those like 26 qualities, and we have talked about those 26 in detail. Take it up and start learning it or start practicing it over and over. And it's going to be very hard. It might take 2 years to get even at least one attitude right. But that's fine. We still have this lifetime. And the more and more we practice, the mind gets clear. Antakarana. Antakarana is basically the mind-body, the mind complex. So Mano Buddhi Ahankara Chitta complex. So when that gets clear, you can see yourself and you can realize yourself. And that's where it should finally end, right? That realization, that self realization. And now we have four more shlokas in the same chapter, and that concludes it. But before we go into the four shlokas, I just want to open it up and ask interactively if there's any questions or any comments on this particular chapter, right from shloka 1 to shloka 20. Okay, we'll open it up, and I want to make it interactive, and I have a reason for that. Once this chapter is done, we'll do a workshop, like with Miro boards and collaborative with sticky notes and all online. But we'll do that so that this actually gets into our system, the Bhagavad Gita, very interactively. Okay, so I'll open it up for questions.
सुंदर जी, मैं अरुण गर्ग बोल रहा हूँ.
हाँ जी.
बहुत अच्छा आप कह रहे हैं. This is wonderful because I'm going through this journey, what you're describing. For last 3 months, I'm taking Bhagavad Gita, Gandhi Bhagavad Gita, आप जो पढ़ा रहे हैं या जेफरी आर्मस्ट्रॉन्ग जो कहे हैं, and जो आपका जो message है वो इतना, this is so much to what it is. So thank you very much. You know, this is wonder. I just wanted to share that what you say is very real. So two things I want to ask you, sir. One is because I'm a medical doctor, I think Bhagavad Gita is the best textbook of medicine. In a way, Krishna is talking to Arjun like a doctor talking to a patient. And I think there is a real opportunity, जब आपका workshop वगैरह हो, तो अपना जो health है, COVID की वजह से, we can be a very healthy life if we understand Bhagavad Gita. So I think there is a direct correlation between health, wealth, and happiness and Bhagavad Gita. So I think this is a great service, and hopefully we could take it further. Because when I was talking to Ratanji, that was the purpose of my engagement. So I really thank you for engaging me, and I'm with you all the way. So let's do something there. We'll do. But my question is twofold. You use the word Jivatma, and then you also use the word Atma. So उसमें क्या फर्क है?
Okay, so Atma, when I said Atma, it's basically Paramatma, or there's only one Atma, right? And I'll get to you with an example. For example, space, right? Space is so subtle. Now, if I ask a person, how many spaces are there? It makes no sense, because space is space, right? Atma is more subtle than space. Now, what we do is, space is a continuum. Right from the edge of the universe, it's the same space. But when I'm locking it within a confine, it seems like, so bedroom space or bathroom space, or so space becomes confined, and it gets a name, right? It's the exact same thing. Same way, a Jivatma is Atma only. There is no Paramatma or Jivatma. That's only Atma. Atma is like space, Sarvavyapi. But when it's associated with a particular identity, the ego, mano, buddhi, ahankara, in the Paramatma's presence, these four things start coming alive as if they are intelligent, right? And that we call Jivatma. Really speaking, if Jivatma is a separate entity, it can never merge into Paramatma. It's a mythical entity.
Associated with the individual rather than individual Atma. Okay, so it's a very specific description.
Correct. That's individual Atma.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ji. And thank you for bringing up the medical aspect. We'll actually work towards that. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you. You don't know how appreciative I am. I can't express that, and you can't see me, but this is wonderful. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, Ji.
Namaste, Sundarji. I got a question about the afterlife. I actually am one of them who thinks that there will be only life, and once you die, the energy, it's like a lamp. You switch off that lamp, the light goes away. You cannot say that light comes to another place, right? It's like, so how do you see that?
Okay, so no, this is a thought process. Again, like I said, in the spiritual spectrum, there is one side that believes that here and now is final, right? And that's where you begin with. Like I too, in my teen, was a communist, or given to communist tendencies, where I thought exactly as you did. And then I had certain experiences when I wanted to disprove Hinduism and I went into it. Meditation led me to certain experiences that, you know, it says that rishis are much more intelligent than we give credit for. Okay. And when you start reading, and I'm making it very short, but very good question, that, for a person who says that there is no life beyond, they see the here and now, right? And this is because they have not seen the future, or they've forgotten where they have come from, right? Logic and reasoning and all of the Tarka Shastras and Nyaya Shastras and the Upanishads and all the Bhashyas are given to deep down Tarka and arguments that pose same questions as to how and the whys, and each of them have a counter as to, okay, so for example, once you understand the nature of Atma, as we talked about when we were talking to Arun Garji, um, what you are thinking is you're a product of biological combination, and somehow that, by chance this body is here, and it'll become worm food once the lamp is switched off. However, there's a continuity, and these are all logic and reasoning. The continuity is basically, if you are what you are, there are some kids who are born as a prodigy. Suddenly, they have the musical sense, even if none of the parents are musically inclined. And there are some kids who come back and say, I used to be that in that lifetime. So multiple lifetimes. Some people can actually remember the lifetime and accurately, go back to the village they were born in the previous lifetime. So how do you explain those kind of things? So there was, Indians, or the ancient ancestors, were experts in studying this phenomenon as a whole. And the conclusion was, not just in India, this is all of, Asia. The conclusion is, the belief is, dharmic belief is, it's not just one body that is born and dies. There's a continuum aspect of it, right? And this goes into a deeper philosophical, probably after Bhagavad Gita, when we take up the Prakarana Granthas, right? Or the Vedanta Granthas, or even Brahma Sutra. Brahma Sutra is too high. Tattva Bodha and Atma Bodha and all, then we'll actually go into this aspect of it. For now, I would say just believe in it till you understand it. There's no other way to say it.
Yeah, one more way of thinking for me is like when you actually do something very harmful for the society, if you don't believe in an afterlife, you may be actually doing very much bad things. So this belief is actually for you to think that you will be again coming back and you live in a future society where you do that bads will actually reflect back to you at that moment. So you want to have a better thinking at this moment so that you won't harm the society much.
Yeah, on the shorter level, that's a nice way to look at it, because that is the truth. Because any work you do has a repercussion, right? So if you come back, then yes, you will. But even otherwise, even if you don't come back at all, right? Or even if you don't come back to the same world at all. So for example, I'm wearing a black shirt and I'm committing, say, a crime now. I change into a yellow shirt. I'm not going to be let go. The work that I've done today is going to follow me no matter how many types of shirts I change. Same way the Jivatma, because it moves from body to body, any karma that you do in one place will continue, or it makes a impact on the Jiva signature, which it takes to the next level. So for example, if you're an angry person, always, I'm not saying you, but if a person is always angry, they suddenly don't become happy when they're taking a new birth, right? So that continues. So it's at this point, it's very hard for one to believe, just based on books alone, that the Jivatma, or the there's multiple lives and all those things. But it's more of a continuous effort and realization. At one point, you'll actually realize it and move from theory to practical. So at this point, that's what I'm saying. Bear with me and think that it is somehow given as a pretext, right? But guaranteed, at some point, you will evolve to a level where you know that, okay, this is actually, there's something beyond, right?
Thank you, Sundarji.
Yeah.
It is basically the prarabdha karma, or the sanchit karma, which comes rolling on.
Correct.
those things happens. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Rajanji.
So
So, as per our Shastras, do we believe that there are many earths? Like maybe in my next birth, I will not uh, get birth in this earth and maybe in another planet. Is it so?
Shastras don't say that particularly about different planets per se, but they talk about different lokas, right? From which you come back. And they're not planets per se. It's not like you go and live in the moon or Mars. There's a Devaloka and there's a Gandharvaloka and all. But nonetheless, probability wise, think of it this way. Forget the entire planetary systems and atmas and all. But think of it this way, if you're a continuum, right? The Atma, the pretext for the entire thinking is the Atma is imperishable, right? And Atma is neither the body nor generated by the body. It's not a part of the body, not a property of the body, and not a product of the body, right?
Yes.
So it persists irrespective of the entire universe being destroyed. Atma is there before the universe, after the universe, during the universe. I'm talking about Paramatma. Okay.
Yes.
Now, from a single, like from my point of view, the way I see death is this. One day I'll close my eyes, and then when I open my eyes, there'll be a nurse or somebody else, pinching the cheeks and say, "Hey, welcome to this world," or something like that. So all that baggage that is now here, or the fear of death, will be there only till the moment of leaving this world. Now, in between, what happens, I don't know. Like I know the rishis have talked about other things, but when you're jumping from body to body, it doesn't matter where you're born, probably in a different planet, but Shastras don't say different planets. No. But what is guaranteed is your attitude will remain the same until it is changed. Your direction, the jiva goes, will go in the same direction like physics, right? Your ball keeps moving till you consciously turn the curvature to some other level.
Gee, yeah.
So you
And
want
when
it to go down or up, depends on you.
yes, and when does this journey end?
When you realize yourself. Like I said, currently there is the journey that we have had is all psychological, and you keep believing that you're a human being trapped and you're powerless. Once you, and again, I'm going back into this philosophy, is once you unleash that, or give yourself that freedom, saying that I'm not a limitation, I am the Paramatma, then you make that difference.
Sundarji, wonderful description, because I'm also in this journey, and I used to doubt about mind, body, and intellect, because being a doctor, I understand body, but I didn't understand the concept of mind. But through this journey, I now can start to understand journey. So you're right, just for our listeners, that once we keep going, we'll understand, because there is something called afterbirth. But what I have rationalized, and I'll be interested by other things, what I say, I'm doing it for my grandson. In other words, you hear most of the leaders say, I want to leave a better world for my grandson. So that is another way of rationalizing, I want to be good because my life will be better for my own family, which I could see.
Right.
So that's another perspective I'll leave for your comments, because that's working for me right now till I understand the concept of continuation and moksha.
Right.
So, but I think I just want to say to others, believe what you're saying, because it's happening to me on a personal level, that now as a doctor, I can have a good conversation about what is mind and what's the difference between body and mind.
Very nice. Thank you, Ji. So leaving the legacy or setting an example. Yeah.
but Vedanta says we are not the body, we are not the mind, we are the Brahman.
Right.
Yes. So one day we'll be talking about those things too, how we are influenced with this body, these 5 tattvas, and then the mind, and how it's reflecting our day-to-day activities. As Sundarji says, it's a psychological process. So
It's a
Brahman,
process.
which is always alone, was alone, will be alone, just the ignorance we have to get rid of. Yes.
But until that point, it's a journey that you have to live in a way that elevates you and elevates others around you.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
And then like Arunji said, it's for his grandson, because the next generation is looking up to us for
Yes.
the path they walk in.
and that's a kind of, I personally take it like all those suras and asuras, those kind of stuff which you are saying. I believe if we are changing it, our offspring, the kids, they are going to change it after seeing us. And what the kind of the moral culture we are going to leave for them, I believe this is the platform. Because whatever they are studying in the school, that's basically to live their life, to earn in the society. But apart from that, the kind of the way we are living our life, that's going to be a kind of scripture for them. Okay, my dad or my grandparents, they lived life. This is the way we should live.
Yeah.
So I believe that's a great thing. Changes every day. Changes is good.
Yeah, and my biggest fear, or so to speak, is, we are not living in a time where we have the gurukulas that can teach the next generation. It's upon us, right? So it becomes even more careful or even more important for us to walk that path so that others can walk, right? If we ourselves start neglecting it, then there's no hope for the next generation.
One more question.
Yes, please.
Yeah. What can be done for realize ourselves? Like Adi Shankaracharya said, do certain things so that you will realize, and those paths. How can we do in this Kali Yuga?
Okay, so good question. So there are multiple paths you can take, but the goal is the same, which is self-realization, right? So for some, it is rituals, right? Like I think I should show a slide. I used to do this a long time ago. Hinduism is not different rituals. Think of it vertically as a university or schooling system. At the bottommost, when you're introducing your children to spirituality, everybody is born an atheist or agnostic. Nobody is born, believing in Rama or Krishna. Everybody is an agnostic. As you take them to the temple, kids understand and learn, how the music is sung, or there's a murti. They see the physical aspect, and then you start doing the puja. So you give it a personal shivaling, and then to answer Priyaji's question, is first you start off with and thinking that God is one, like there's a single God, it has a form and it's outside. And then you mature to a level where you know that God is everywhere, not just one, but there are multiple gods and it's everywhere, in the trees, in the bush, in the animals. Sarva Vyapi, Aneka Rupa Ishvara. Then you know that God that is outside and everywhere is inside you through meditation. That's inquiry, right? So Antaratma. So from that, then you graduate up to say this Antaratma is the same across. Now, when I'm talking to all of you, you don't have different Jivatmas or Paramatmas. It's one Paramatma. But that's a realization that you have to get. It's not theoretical. It's a realization. Once you see that connection across the universe, then you've gone to the next level, which is where the Mahatmas are. And then you realize that all that in and out, I am. So finally, it becomes I am the God I'm searching for. So whichever path you want to take, which is the ritual part, don't stick with just the ritual. You have to graduate to the next level. Then you have to graduate. Otherwise, what happens is throughout your life, you're stuck with just the ritual part and you're not going up. So in every aspect. So for example, you're doing Ramji ki puja or Shiva Abhishek. May that prayer be to the Lord that, hey Bhagavan, please help me go to the next level. And automatically that help will arrive, in the form of a guru, in the form of advices, but all that is coming from within you. When I say within you, it's Paramatma, that's who is helping you.
I believe there is a last question, Sundarajan from Suniti ji.
Hanji.
How to overcome hesitation to spread spirituality? Hesitation to spread the word, talking in general.
Yeah, okay. What would be the hesitation? So that's first question would be, what would be the, so Suniti ji, you can
Ji, just in general, like we are kind of going on the path of like spirituality. जैसे आपने एक चीज mention की कि आप थोड़ा सा communalism में थोड़ा सा थे in the beginning, then you started following the path of spirituality and you kind of got into certain practices and you had certain experiences. So what, like in general, when we want to share with the other people, like how can we inspire more people to get into this? I see like a lot of ignorance towards our cultural practices, जैसे कि आपने mention किया कि we don't have gurukulas in general, and it is our responsibility to spread this idea like further into the
Right.
kids, not only into the kids. I see a lot of like ignorance in the society.
Mhm.
A lot of people are not even coming forward. They, in general, like to explore our own like things. So I feel like get
Right.
something, how we can spread, how we can create kind of, I mean, I see Naha is doing very good effort to kind of have people joining and nurturing our little kids. But at the same time, I'm like, how we can create wider kind of outreach.
Right, right. So first thing, even before I begin, I was not in the communal, but communist.
I'm sorry, yeah.
That's okay. so that is even on the left wing, right? So that's that was my influence when I was a teenager, but everything else happened. But anyway, long story short, I think it's a very good thing that you asked this question, because this cannot be in small groups. It's not just teaching kids, but also helping them be enthusiastic about it. So what we used to have, this is like 10 years ago, is we used to have a group that did Vishnu Sahasranam every Friday, right? So like families would meet and we would chant Vishnu Sahasranam, then have potluck dinner, and kids also would chant, and then there'll be bhajan after that. So it becomes more of a mixer, but it'll be a satsangi mixer. Right, and then now my kids actually, they have a group where they're learning Rudram Chamakam. Like we have one of our very good friends, and he used to be the president of Sai Center. Fantastic, he's very good at chanting Rudram, and he teaches, and they've been going for 4 years. So now it's become online, but the Rudram classes still continue. Right. So and I can say that all the kids in that group, their pronunciation is very good, like no accent, right? We can do that in the mandir, right? So Rudram chanting, or we can do, Nari Shakti can do something like Mahishasura Mardini Shloka chanting. Can be classes that the kids enjoy, and I'll go one step beyond. It's not just for the sake of spirituality. All the Sanskrit shlokas and Vishnu Sahasranam, it helps you rewire your brain. Like I'm an example of that. I think I've told this to many people, audience before. Like I used to be a under average student in school, like till grade 10. Like I got 3.5% in math when I was in grade 7. I tell that proudly now, right? So 3.5%, right? But then I started reading Vishnu Sahasranam, and by the time I was in grade 12, like in a degree, I was a gold medalist in IIT, and that's all like completely rewired my brain. So it is actually potent. So you can tell the philosophical aspect, or you can give that fish and hook of get straight A's, but come to the Vishnu Sahasranam chant. I can see my own son, like after his Upanayanam, he has become like almost a straight A student. When I say almost, he gets a minus kind of thing, but there's no extra studies. What is done in the class, he understands right away, because you don't have to read more, you just have to grasp more. And all this that we're talking about, it actually helps us. And the way we package our Hindus are really bad at packaging their wisdom. Right? So we don't tell others, or we don't go and actually actively approach and say, this is what the benefits are. Right? So in your own community, you can start a chanting class. Bhagavad Gita chanting, or Vishnu Sahasranam chanting, or Shiv Sahasranam, so anything of that sort.
Hi, Sundarajanji. I want to share my experience. My name is Hari. Just because you mentioned about Vishnu Sahasranam, I did exactly the same thing. As for me, I had no idea about Vishnu Sahasranam or anything. Of course, from grandmothers and mothers, I have a general idea of Ramayana and Mahabharata. But other than that, I did not know anything. But I realized the lack of understanding about anything in this, where I'm the upstate New York now. So the kids have all grown up in this our small community, but none of them know much. All are like into the English, the Western education. They know all those stuff, but most of the, because the last 3 years has been political, different issues back in India. So all of them had very opposing viewpoints about many of the issues that really worried me. So I understood that I cannot. First, I have to learn this myself. So I looked at many places. Bhagavad Gita was too much for me, and so I thought maybe why not start with Vishnu Sahasranama. So I just watched some few YouTube videos, and I thought maybe this is also not the right way to learn. I organized a group. We have a small WhatsApp group, not at all active. It's like Hindu people, people just go to the temple and does not do much other things. So I just got some few kids, 5-year-old, including my 5-year-old son, and only 3 or 4 kids came. But actually, we started the Vishnu Sahasranamam and we went ahead for 1 month, and it was a very revolutionary experience for myself, for my kid, and from then on I started learning more and more. We also did the Devi Kavacham. So that was also the very first time I'm learning that myself. So as I'm trying to, I'm like the guide there, but as I'm trying to do that, I am also learning a lot. So yeah, so I try to watch other experts like you and try to learn as much as I can and try to impart that. But that has been a revolutionary thing for the kids. So Suniti ji was asking that similar question, I believe. So those kids, every single thing that we try to tell them, they soaked it up.
Yeah, and they have a lot more questions.
Exactly.
Always have questions. Yeah.
And it was a great learning experience for myself. So that was more.
Yeah.
Great.
I'm so
I
happy
think
that
this is the excellent answer to Suniti ji. The way we have clarity of thoughts and then realization of the things, then you have a confidence communicating to wider community, then you can work with their way. Yeah, it's an excellent answer hidden there too. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Ji.
So with this, the mantras, Sundarji, and then we can.
Oh yeah. So Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadhaya Purnameva Vasishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om.
Thank you so much, everyone. Stay aligned with the divine. Feel every moment. We are here with the creator and the creation, both are together. Thank you so much, everyone. Have Shubh Ratri.
Shubh Ratri.
Thank you.
Namaste.
Namaste.
Namaste.